Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Hey, new line. I love it. This history we found out. I don't effing care if they have weapons. That's going to be right up there with, government of, for, and by. We the people should not perish from the earth. Abe Lincoln. That's right up there with Franklin Roosevelt's. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. JFK and the ask not what you can do, what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Or even Ronald Reagan, Mr. Gorbachev, open up this gate and tear down this wall. Yeah. We've now got the Orange Menace. I don't effing care if they've got weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the mags away. Yeah. I can just see that now. It's going to be on a giant billboard. Yeah, that's welcome to America. Take the mags away. Let the faithful. The other one is, let them hang Mike Pence. History, my friends, history in the making. And what did our corporate controlled for-profit right-wing conservative media focus on today? Was it that we had a president that wanted his vice president hung? Was it the fact that he was okay with the people who were there being armed with weapons and overarmed, overwhelmed the Capitol Police? Was that the story? No, that was not the story. No. What we got was ketchup on the wall. We got flying hamburgers. That's what we got, flying hamburgers. Yeah, occasionally, evidently, that's the big thing. People were shocked, I tell you. We had a president who threw temper tantrums. And I'm going, hello? Seriously? This is what we're focusing on today? That there was ketchup dripping down the wall? That the worst thing this guy could have done was throw his dish against the wall? Seriously? That's what we're focusing on? Flying hamburgers. Never mind that he wanted his vice president hung. I mean, oh my gosh. I'm not surprised. Now look, I'll be honest. I woke up looking for this stuff today. I woke up looking for the absurd, for the ridiculous media culture that we have that gives us the shiny stuff, a good healthy dose of outrage candy to keep us, focused in the wrong direction. I'm expecting that. And of course, you were waiting for the right-wing voices to attack Cassidy Hutchinson, of which, the first thing, here's the reality. This is why I believe what she had to say. One, her career as a MAGA zealot, over. The Kool-Aid that she drank, it's over. The path she was on that she could have led a very comfortable life in, over. More importantly, if you remember, the first response from the former guy was not that she's a liar. No. Not that anything she was saying was untrue. No, it wasn't that. No. It was to attack and diminish her. I don't know who she was, attack her character, her. Wasn't about what she was saying. No, because true. And this is what they do. It's all about the deflecting. Now, they let the other stuff to the right-wing minions, who then are going to try and pick pieces apart here and there. Oh, wait a second. Here's the reality. Donald Trump's so fat he can't go after the steering wheel. Doesn't mean he didn't try. Doesn't mean he didn't make an attempt. Now, was the attempt successful? Because one of my favorite cartoons of the day are, a tiny child like Trump with little baby hands, trying to get around the neck of a giant, Secret Service agent who's just kind of like, get off me, old man. I get that. Didn't mean he didn't try. So yeah, that's been the fun part. Now for me, again, what came out of the hearing, what came out of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, the big stuff for me was, as I said, our quote of the day: take down the freaking mags. Let all the people with weapons that he knew had weapons, because for those who've been longtime listeners, you may remember on January 6th, on the day of the insurrection, I was questioning how and why all of these people had things. I don't know, like metal flagpoles. How do you get those? Because I've been to protests at the Capitol. They only let you have cardboard tubes. Not even aluminum tubes like the Bush years. Cardboard tubes. No metal flagpoles with eagles on the top. No weapons like that. You're not allowed to have that. And now we find out, because of Miss Hutchinson's testimony, that the criminals who came armed and ready for the insurrection, because they knew what was going on, because it was pre-planned, they didn't go through the mags, which upset the Donald, because he wanted his people right up close. He wanted the photo op, and again, his vanity. This is the part that I think people should be focused on. The fact that he was more concerned about his vanity and his size, his crowd size. All of my people loving really close to me. It's not enough that they were there with weapons ready to overthrow a government for him. No, they had to be a little bit closer. They had to get in the photo op. They had to make sure that the crowd size photo was there. I mean, this is amazing. And to have the MAGA world go, no, it's all a lie. It's all made up. It's all no good. We got to figure out something. We found out that the House Minority Leaders told Trump not to come to the Capitol. Don't do it. Don't do it. You got the White House counsel saying, don't do it. Unimaginable amounts of crimes. Still wanted to do it. Because, again, above the law. Nothing going to stop him. And this is where you start coming to the reality that these people, they don't, this isn't about democracy. This isn't about the will of the people. This isn't about America. This is about ego. This is about one guy and a whole bunch of people attempting to appease him because he's brainwashed a generation. And I'm still struggling with this. I'm still struggling with the fact that there are still, in this moment, people who are going to look at that testimony and, oh no, she's making stuff up. Understand, this 26-year-old woman, she could have been on Easy Street. She could have been. She could have kept her mouth silent. She could have taken the threats from whoever is twisting arms and making those, hey, you got a nice career there. Shame if something happened. We also found out that there's somebody, and I'm hoping we find out who it is very soon. Somebody going around going, hey, you might want to stay loyal. Good things happen to people who stay loyal. Yep. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated by some of the news coverage that I've seen lately. The Michael Flynn thing hasn't gotten a lot of attention, other than, a guy who praised the peaceful transfer of power and had, talked at length about how it makes us exceptional, now pleads the fifth when asked if he supported the said concept. Found that interesting, The fact that both Rudy Giuliani and Mark Meadows both asked Trump for pardons, I think that's interesting. We're finding out a lot more. And oh, by the way, here's the good news today. the former White House counsel, Pat Cipollone. He has been subpoenaed to testify. Now, this is one of these moments. It's one of those moments where I go, did he get subpoenaed because they demanded it, or did he get subpoenaed because he needs the subpoena so that he has the cover to go, hey, they made me come in? No. Going to be interesting to see what the guy who said the the suicide pact stuff. Going to be interesting to see what he's got to say. I hope we get to see it. I hope we do. But this is fascinating stuff. And oh, by the way, my congressman's name, Scott Perry, came up again in that hearing. Again, somebody who reportedly has asked for a pardon. We now know that he was in talks with Trump about going to the Capitol. He was there too. So again, a lot of questions for my congressman, Scott Perry, the Brigadier General. Again, somebody I find very scary and very, very dangerous in this moment. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how we doing?
We're doing. Yeah, I'm like you. It's like the media is trying to divert on some things, and it's just really ridiculous. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Had one Democrat's name came up doing anything illegal, it would be splashed all over the place, and they would be making such a big deal out of it. It's just not even funny.
Yep. No, and the other part of this is, you now look back at how unprepared the Capitol Police were. And you just think about it from the frame that Trump knew that that these people, the very best people, his people, the people who weren't there for him but willing to hang Mike Pence, how heavily armed they were. And then you look at the cops and what they were armed with. Most of them were just, had their batons and just and little shields. They were woefully unprepared for what was going. And this was, I argue, planned.
Oh, I agree with you. And everyone at that point in time on January 6th, and for like a week, 2 weeks afterwards, everyone that wasn't a Republican, that is, was saying, why did they get in there with weapons? How did they do that? Why weren't the cops prepared? And we all suspected it, but now we have confirmation, I guess.
Yeah, well, going to be interesting to see what Cipollone has to say. Are you upset about the China, though? I mean, because that's what we're supposed to be upset about, the ketchup on the wall, the broken China, the hamburgers against the wall. I guess that's what we're supposed to be upset about.
Hey, you know what? That sounds like Melania's problem, not mine.
Oh, you think she's on her hands and knees cleaning up the dishes? No. That's never happened.
From what I understand, she's living in Maryland with her parents in a house that she bought.
Well,
she's not even living with him.
Well,
so hey.
That's their deal. I'm not. Don't care. None of my business. Let them deal with whatever they got to deal with. But appreciate the thoughts,
Yep.
Alice.
Take care.
Great stuff. No, look. I'm clearly not all that concerned about the ketchup in the hamburger. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back here on the other side. What do you think? I mean, is it that big of a deal? The hamburgers, the ketchup on the wall. Do you think Melania was on her hands and knees scrubbing the carpet? You think? No, not a chance. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible, 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, R&B singer R. Kelly sentenced to 30 years in prison. Good for him. Evidently, sex trafficking case. Along with the, what's her name? The Giselle Maxwell, I think that's how you say her name. She got 20 years. A lot of people in the sex trafficking thing, a lot of sexual abuse stuff, getting some serious time. Not so much in the religious community, though. Not so much there. As the FBI has opened what they're calling a sweeping probe of clergy in New Orleans, evidently a bunch of sex abuse cases there, and just in time for the end of Roe versus Wade, and what I've been saying is going to be a conservative pivot to reinvigorating the social safety net. This is one of those moments where I'm telling you, I think this is going to happen. Mark the words. And I got a bunch of pushback from people. No, conservatives hate poor people. Yeah, they hate poor people. I didn't say they were going to help them. I said they're going to pivot to social programs that they can privatize. And someone said, well, you have to explain that because I don't quite get what you're saying. If you remember the George Bush years, this is my argument. If you remember the George Bush years, everything was about faith-based initiatives. Remember that phrase, faith-based initiatives. We were going to give a bunch of money to faith-based organizations, the do-gooder folks in the name of God Incorporated, to go out and do supposedly the good work that they're supposed to be doing. Now, are there some that do? Yeah, I think there are. Do I think most of them are spinning their wheels and wasting? Absolutely. Do I think most of the money that we give in tax breaks to churches is a horrible waste of tax dollars? Yes. I think we should be taxing churches like anybody else. They should be paying their fair share like everybody else. Because I'm sorry, I just don't see the value in the big picture, in the aggregate. That said, doesn't mean I'm anti-religion. I believe everybody should, follow your conscience, follow your creator, follow your God, follow whatever you want. That is your right. That's what you do. I do my thing, you do yours, but I shouldn't have to subsidize and pay for yours. It's that simple. But during the Bush years, they gave a whole boatload of money to different organizations to do community work. And because the conservatives have been getting beat up for years about the fact that they don't really give a rat's behind about the homeless. They don't really care about hungry children. They really don't care about the poor. They really don't care about the downtrodden. Now remember, the religious people are the people who are supposed to be the ones out there healing the sick and taking care of the elderly and worrying about the downtrodden. That's supposed to be what Jesus was all about, right? So the faith-based initiatives were supposed to reward those people doing the good work, and that's how we were going to provide the social safety net. We don't need evil government. We need people closest to the problem. This is what the argument was. And they blew a bunch of money on this. And honestly, the results were minimal. There was some good done, but for the most part, the results were minimal. A lot of tax dollars went into feeding a machine. That's what's going to happen here. And you're already seeing a ramping up of a lot of these organizations, and now the pivot of, hey, now we'll help you, get the health care you need. We'll help you get the food you need. We'll help you get all the services you need. You come through us. And as I argued, there are certain groups locally that I don't deal with. There are certain organizations that I just, because of their stance on, we'll only help you if you get into our religious track. We'll only give you food or shelter or assistance if you follow our mission. And I don't think that that's how it should be. I'm someone who believes you help someone, and if they want to come to your mission, then that's one thing. But to mandate it, to require it, that's a problem for me. And I've not worked with those groups. This is what I see us going for as a matter of policy, as a matter of addressing those programs, and the pivot for conservatives to now say that they care about the children that are forced being born. They don't care about them now. And I think that's important to realize. They've always been against social spending on food stamps. I mean, think about what they just did with the extra $250 a month for the poorest families in this country. Absolutely under no circumstances were they were going to allow that to continue. And as I said back then, think of how cruel that was. Because I remember as a kid being, poor and not knowing it, not knowing that it wasn't right, normal, natural, good, any of those things, that we were struggling so much that there wasn't food in the house at the end of the month, that my mother was always worried about us being evicted, that there was always a concern of keeping the lights on, or you get the picture. But that little bit of money, gave them that, like Joe Biden says, a little bit of breathing room. Gave them that little bit of, hey, there's going to be food at the end of the month, a little bit of a cushion. And then to show them what was possible, to say this is how it could be, and then to just snatch it away, especially right after Christmas. Merry Christmas. In the most religious time of the year, we're going to make sure that you go back into poverty. Remember them for that, because that's who they are. So when they come and say, no, now we care about the poor and the homeless and the hungry, and we care about, the elderly, and we care about all the people we've been dumping on for decades, think about it in the frame of faith-based initiatives that they're going to propose is all about funneling tax dollars through private or religious organizations into campaign dollars for these people to line their pockets with. Because that's how this game is going to be played. And oh, by the way, we're going to enrich a couple more really rich charlatan preachers. So you're going to get another one to maybe own another stadium somewhere. You're going to get another one who wants a $60 million jet. You're going to get another one who wants, more. While there are people in their congregation and in their eyes shot who are going to bed hungry, who are going to sleep on the street, who are going without health care, who are not getting the medicine and the medical attention that they need, who aren't getting the education that they should be getting. This is my problem with conservative ideology. This is my problem with conservatism. Talk a good game, follow through not there. All this preaching about privatization, we'll let the market decide. Well, the market sadly decides that only the well-connected and the affluent get what they need. While kids like me growing up in a place like I did will get nothing. And that's where my problems begin, and why we have to really start fighting back against this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. If you missed any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available, wherever you get your podcasts. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day SWAC leader Philip Murray beat back reports that the Little Steel strike had collapsed. Even as the steel companies were championing that the strike had been broken, Murray insisted that of the 90,000 workers involved, only 20,000 had returned to work in the mills that stretched across 7 states. He added they were mostly supervisors and foremen and not production workers. Murray leveled charges against Ohio Governor Martin Davey that the Ohio National Guard was being used as company police to smash the strike. Strike leaders added that the companies were staging dummy back-to-work parades. In fact, Labor Secretary Perkins had announced that it was the government's effort at mediation that had collapsed. But the steel magnates were on the offensive and had the backing of local politicians and police. George Mike, a union man and disabled veteran, was the latest casualty in the anti-labor war. He was killed the day before at Maltrup Steel in Beaver Falls, Ohio, as picketers clashed with deputy sheriffs. In Indiana, police rushed to plant gates at Inland Steel to guard against new battles as 20,000 strikers prepared for the imminent forced reopenings of Inland Steel and Youngstown Sheet and Tube there. Both mills remained closed for weeks. In Warren, Ohio, police issued a warrant for CIO strike leader Gus Hall and 2 other strike leaders on charges that he was the brains behind a terrorist plot to blow up strike-bound steel mills. And at Bethlehem's Cambria Works in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, 2 separate dynamitings destroyed main water supplies, causing an immediate end to an attempted back-to-work movement there. The strike was far from over. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
What's the most damning thing about America's healthcare system? The system. While our doctors, nurses, and technicians are among the best in the world, the system itself is not even designed for care, but for the constant expansion of profits for insurance giants, drug makers, hospital chains, system managers, financiers, and other voracious components of the medical industry. For starters, ponder that term, medical industry. The ethical essence of healthcare is that it's a human right, essential to every person and to the common good. But corporate elites now claim to own our health by shriveling the concept of care to just another product available to those who can pay whatever monopolistic industrialists demand. But this rationing of care meant the industry was leaving a mass market of millions of patients untapped. So industry bean counters made a critical adjustment. Lower prices? Don't get silly. Instead, the system is pushing medical debt as the ticket to care. So you come in sick or injured, scared, dazed, and suddenly you're hooked up to a long-term medical payment plan. A recent survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation revealed that more than 100 million Americans, including 41% of all adults, are in hock because of the skyrocketing costs of the so-called care industry. This includes debt that patients owe directly to the system, plus money borrowed from family or friends or put on credit cards. An analysis in 2019 estimated that families were being hit with at least $195 billion in payments for medical borrowing, a number driven dramatically higher since the pandemic. As one doctor angrily said of industrial health care, debt is no longer just a bug in our system, it is one of the main products. We have a healthcare system almost perfectly designed to create debt. This is Jim Hightower saying, how sick is that?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So interesting story yesterday that you got. Now, yesterday's story was 88 elected prosecutors and district attorneys. That number has increased over the day. And it's far north of that, of people saying, hey, we're in elected positions. We are not going to enforce these abortion bans. We're not going to prosecute women. We're not going to do this. And you go, okay, well, for now, that's great. A lot of little prosecutorial discretion. That's a good thing, which is why the right-wing money will be coming for them very soon. So this is a short-term security little bit. But long-term, this is where the attacks are going to be coming next. And the big money is going to start flowing very soon. And here to share some thoughts on how that is going to roll out, I've asked Dr. Alyssa Bowen to come talk with us. She's a managing editor and senior researcher over at True North Researcher. She's also a contributor over at Truth Out. They've got a piece out titled Right-Wing Dark Money is Coming for Your Reproductive Rights in Your State, coming near you. Dr. Bowen, thanks for taking time for us.
Yes, thank you so much, Rick, for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I'm looking at these, 88 plus district attorneys, prosecutors who have said, you know what, we're not doing this. You're not getting us to to go after your hate. We're not going after this. We're not doing this. These are targets now, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, all you have to do is look as far as attorney general's races in different states to see sort of the model there. Yeah, we just had a piece out in Truth Out that talked about the way that attorney general races are being targeted, and they're doing that through a really massive sort of network by Leonard Leo, who is, I think he's getting increasing name recognition. But this far right lawyer is at the helm of over 580, a network that has received donations upwards of $580 million since 2014. And he's kind of coordinating all these groups that are using different tactics basically to overturn our rights. So they're going after attorney generals, they're going after rights in the legislators. They're looking to there are some of the groups that are, like, for example, the Republican State Leadership Committee that's looking to gerrymander in the states in order to get right-wing legislators in power, and then enforce different legislation that favors them. So we really are seeing this play out at many levels, and we're definitely seeing this play out at the Supreme Court level this week as well.
No, and the reality is that the moneyed interest of this country, the wealth class of this country, has funded a machine that is second to none, and that most people don't even know. And as you said, this Leonard Leo guy is getting a little bit of attention where he never wanted it before. This is an extremist right-wing lawyer, but also a fundraiser for the Federalist Society, who is behind what's going on at the Supreme Court, and not just the Supreme Court, but our entire judicial system. They have been behind stacking the court with ultra right-wing theocratic corporate justices and judges for years. This isn't new, and it's not news to folks like, well, your organization and people here at the program.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and tomorrow we'll see what happens. You mentioned pro-corporate judges with West Virginia versus EPA. That decision should come out tomorrow, and unfortunately, I think we might see the power of these federal agencies' ability to do their jobs really just essentially destroyed. And for example, now the EPA may no longer be able to really do anything meaningful related to climate change. And
where they shouldn't be able to do anything. We should be able to burn and pillage and pollute at will, because that's capitalism. That's it's what makes us money. But no, this is the weird part of where we are, because the moneyed interest who have gone unexposed for years continue to push for policies that benefit them, the handful, at the expense of the rest of us. And you look at like the Koch brothers, and you look like some of the big names, the Betsy DeVosses of the world. You look at some of the handful of people who are out in the public eye, but there's a bunch of them behind the scenes who are funding this kind of zealotry, this right-wing theocracy, this kind of fascistic kind of form of government that really our court system seems to be moving towards. Or am I just being a bit too hyperbolic?
I don't think you are being hyperbolic, Rick. I think Leonard Leo sort of made this clear that he intends, I can't remember the exact context of the speech, but he gave a speech several years ago where he explicitly said that he is, in his entire plan, is to sort of turn back our rights to the pre-New Deal era, where there were sort of robber barons and like huge corporations that dominated civic life. And that's his ultimate goal, and the goal of the funders behind him and his network.
See, now I keep saying, they want to take us back to the good old days of the 80s and 90s, and not the 1980s and 90s. And you've just highlighted that. They want to take us back to the gilded age of the 1880s and that era, because, well, it's when they had all the power, they had all the money, and we working stiffs, well, we were desperate and pliable and had to work, morning to night, and still, morning to night till death. That's where they want things going back to.
Seems that way.
So in looking at this, because, and again, they have built, and you have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, you go back, you read the Powell memo from 1971, and you talk about the statesman-like sum of 10% of all corporate profits going into a pot of money to build all of these institutions, from these think tanks to these attack groups to things like the Federalist Society, who has had such outweighed power in deciding our Supreme Court. Why is there nothing on the other side? Why is there nothing on the side of, hey, we need balance? How has that not happened?
Oh, that is a difficult question to answer. I would say part of the issue is that, there are groups now that are on the left, demand justice, fighting for power in the courts, but there's just not, first of all, I think Democrats are more critical of dark money generally. I would say that, Senator Whitehouse, for example, is pretty outspoken against dark money and for more accountability and public disclosure laws. But so that's one thing. But I think also corporations benefit disproportionately from some of these repressive sort of legislation and policies that are being promoted by this network, and that's a sad thing to say, but I think that also is part of it.
Yeah, it's all about the money. There's just not enough money on the other side to create these institutions that have done so much damage to our country. And I look at this overturning of Roe as just one more step to taking us back to the pre-New Deal era. Because I keep saying this, we're at this moment right now. This is 1932 all over again. And how we decide to react to this come this November is going to decide how my children are going to have to lead their entire lives. I don't see there being any quick fixes or any quick changes. Or do you see something different?
Oh, it's really easy to be pessimistic, and I definitely have my pessimistic moments. I would say I hope let's just say, like, the Roe decision, the overturning of Roe was devastating, and reading the decisions of Alito and Thomas it's just despicable to see what the things that they're writing. And we know also that they have larger aspirations. This is really only just the beginning for them. Even if you look specifically at Roe, like the dark money anti-abortion groups that are behind this, for example, Alliance Defending Freedom, that authored the bill in Mississippi that was in Dobbs, that was being challenged in Dobbs. That was their entire reason. That's their entire purpose, is to escalate things to the Supreme Court so the captured court can overturn decades and more than decades of rights. But and they think this is just the beginning for them, which it is. Students for Life, which is writing model bills as part of the Leonard Leo Network. He's on the board there, and they are really interested now in basically banning certain kinds of contraception because they consider them abortifacient, like IUDs and those kinds of things. And so it's really, so that's the pessimistic side of things. But I will also say that I think that this is the beginning of a new wave of kind of solidarity building. That's my hope. You've seen, and I think also people are seeing these aren't just single issue concerns. This dark money in politics and the way it comes to bear in our political system, because the Dobbs decision is devastating, but it's also being followed by the decision to make it impossible for climate change policy to change with the EPA, and that disproportionately affects Black and Brown communities. And so I think people, and so does the Dobbs decision, and I think people are seeing that. And I'm really hopeful that this can also be a moment of solidarity building that goes beyond just a single issue.
No, I hope you're right. I hope this is where the groundswell of organizing happens, especially in the workplace. And we're seeing a number of employers coming out and saying, hey, we're going to protect women's access to care, but however we have to do that. And that's a good thing. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Dr. Alyssa Bowen. She's managing editor and senior researcher over at True North Research, also a contributor over at Truth Out. Does some fantastic stuff. They got a new piece out on right-wing dark money. that's coming for your reproductive rights in your state. And yes, it is coming after your judges, coming after your attorney generals, coming after your, well, all of your state judges, your attorney generals, all of your elected officials. Also, I would argue, and this is where maybe we're going to pivot a little bit. I believe that you're going to see a lot of Republicans and these groups find their way towards a social safety net, and rebuilding the social safety net, only doing it with faith-based initiatives and using tax dollars to fund these groups, getting a whole bunch of our tax dollars to fund their hate and their work. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I'm really impressed actually that's something that you've noticed, because that's something that we've been finding too after the Dobbs decision, is that a lot of these groups are now calling basically to kind of avoid claims that they're being hypocritical by saying they're pro-family and then not supporting women when they're forced to give birth due to these policies. And the overturning of Roe. And so a lot of them are saying, we need to build some kind of, they're not saying going so far as social safety nets, but they are saying they want support for women and they want to make sure. But some of them, I was listening to an interview with March for Life's leader earlier, and she said that what that support would look like is actually these, what do they call them? The right-wing version of the abortion clinics, the pregnancy centers,
the crisis centers,
the pregnancy, exactly, the so-called pregnancy crisis centers, where they kind of pressure women into not
browbeat. I like browbeat better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that is her solution. She says that a lot of these centers actually will pay women basically not to have an abortion and will sort of fund that. So I actually think that rather than funding the social safety net, they're going to be more interested in private avenues. So encouraging donation by donors to pregnancy kind of, things that don't really work.
Right. But here's where my thought process goes, because I look at the charter school folks, I look at the homeschool folks. Their ultimate goal is to get their snout into the trough of public money, and not to use it in public schools, not to have government oversight, but to get the money and to then be able to use it for their aims. So as soon as they can get their snout in the trough, then they're going to suck it dry, and they're going to use it for all of their things. So I look at it, all of the things you're talking about, getting those things all lined up, all their programs lined up. And then saying, oh, by the way, we're going to offer tax breaks for billionaires to give us massive donations. Oh, we're going to get block grants to do outreach for X, Y, or Z, knowing that they're never going to do those things. That it's just going to be giant ripoff, but under the guise of, hey, we're taking care of the babies, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Or Alyssa.
I think that's an interesting thought, and that might very well be true. I will say one avenue that they're pushing right now is Rubio's. Rubio is coming out with a that's supposed to be an alternative to an actual genuine comprehensive paid family leave program. And it's actually just a kind of scam where families can borrow against their Social Security and then basically retire later or never if they aren't able to pay it back.
Or never. So
that's sort of them undermining actually the social safety net while pretending to provide a social safety net.
Exactly. See, this is the kind of because I love my Christian capitalists, the prosperity gospel folks who will swindle you out of your last 2 cents, and not give it to the church. And it's just one of those. It's a very different outlook, I guess. I guess we went to different catechism classes and had different preachers, I guess different worlds. So last question I've got for you, in looking at this, because look, the attacks are going to be real. This is going to ramp up and in a huge way. And as I've said, look, the billionaire class that we've allowed to be created, they've got all the money, but fortunately we've outprocreated them. There are more of us if we vote, if we organize, if we come together. You said a moment ago it's easy to be pessimistic. What's the marching order for folks? What advice are you giving? What hope do you have? Leave us with something good.
Okay, yes, I will try. No, I mean, I think, like I said, I think there is hope. I think people need to get out and organize in their communities. I think donating to, recurring donations to funds that fund reproductive rights are really important, and like having that recurring donation so it's sustainable is really important. Or like you said, organize in your workplace is never a bad idea, I think, in order to build solidarity and sort of like networks of organizing. And then I think you can also, if you want to follow us and like kind of, and other like-minded like watchdog groups that track what's going on and kind of try to make legible all these intentionally confusing networks of dark money, then you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow Documented is a really important investigative journalist outlet. The Lever by Dave Sirota is amazing. They do a lot. Andrew Perez there does like an amazing job tracking Leo. And I'm trying to Center for Media and Democracy is also amazing. So I think like keeping informed is also really important.
Some of my favorite places, and of course your site, truenorthresearch.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. But Dr. Bowen, I appreciate you taking time for us. Good stuff. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. We're huge fans.
Thanks so much. Great stuff. Seriously, this is one of these moments, folks, where it's about the money, which is why we need a much different tax code, much different, because we're seeing the abuse. We're seeing the abuse firsthand. This was always the goal. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day that American folklorist Archie Green was born in Winnipeg, Canada. His father was a Ukrainian refugee who had fought in the 1905 Russian Revolution. As a young boy, his family moved to Los Angeles. There, he enjoyed listening to cowboy songs on the radio. Archie grew up to become a shipwright and a carpenter, but he never forgot those cowboy songs. At the age of 40, he returned to college at the University of Illinois to study labor history. He wanted to learn about the songs and the stories at the heart of the U.S. labor movement. He was interested in what he dubbed labor lore, the folklore of working people. For 7 years, Archie led the effort to get Congress to pass the American Folklife Preservation Act. Finally, in 1976, Congress unanimously supported the act. The act allowed for the founding of the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. The center helps to collect the stories of the working class. Archie wrote books and essays about workers, including miners, tinsmiths, millwrights, and the Sailors Union of the Pacific. In 2007, he helped to edit the Big Red Songbook. The book includes the lyrics of nearly 200 labor songs. These songs had been included in various editions of the Little Red Songbooks published by the industrial workers of the world between 1909 and 1973. Archie Green understood that workers' stories deserved to be remembered and told. He spent 5 decades as a scholar and advocate for these stories. His work has helped to preserve the record of working class life in America for generations to come. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Here's some bad news. According to the New York Times, more than 360 newspapers in the U.S. have gone out of business since the pandemic began. You go, wow, that doesn't seem like a lot. But then you go, well, wait a second. Overall, they're reporting that 2,500 newspapers, a quarter, have closed since 2005. And they're also saying that the country's set to lose a third of the newspapers by 2025. Most of them going to be your local outlets, the ones that inform people locally. They've had massive cuts to staff, and the circulation's gone down because we don't read newspapers anymore. They were told. But sad reality is you've seen these cuts, and you've seen all this stuff happen, and the way people get their news and the way people get information is changing, and it's the moneyed interests who have filled those voids, and we as Americans had better figure out how we're going to get unbiased news. This is one of those weird kind of moments where if you're getting something for free, you got to wonder who's really paying for it. And I look at the F channel. The F channel pays millions of dollars to their hosts. Who's paying that? Oh, it's the advertisers. Yeah, okay. Who have an agenda. And that agenda is decidedly moving in a direction that is moving this country down this path to more strength for the moneyed interest. And this is where the organizing, and I'm hoping this happens soon, because I think we're ripe for it. I think this decision, another bad Supreme Court decision, another decision that is not popular with the mass of the public. I'm hoping this is another one of those moments where people go, well, wait a second, this is another bridge too far. This is the last straw. And I don't know how many of those moments we're going to have. How many of those this is the last straw moments can you have before people finally start going, we've got to find common ground. We've got to come together and elect people who are going to do things that we need them to do. Not sure when that's going to happen. Now, I'm told, and this is where, look, the economy's struggling. We're losing jobs. And of course, it's going to be, working class folks who are going to suffer because of the recession that they may bring on. But as they're fighting inflation, there will be job losses. As they're slamming on the brakes, there are going to be people who lose their job. As Larry Summers said, he'd be okay with a year of 10% unemployment. And you go, wow, that's pretty massive to make sure that you're happy. But what about those 10% of the people who lose their jobs? What about those families? What about all the millions of people who are going to lose their homes and all the stuff that goes with that? Yeah, well, we'll give them unemployment. What, in a state like Florida that gives you 6 weeks? This is one of these moments where working class folks have got to come together and start talking about how do we move in a direction that we get policy that benefits, finally, workers and their families. How do we push for policy that's going to make sure that we get the things that are needed? Instead of always the kind of handout, the welfare handouts we give to corporate America and the very wealthy. People who don't need it. Massive tax breaks. No one seemed to be all that upset when Trump gave the massive tax breaks away. You didn't hear whining and complaining then. But boy, we gave $1,400 to people so that they could feed themselves, and you thought the end of the world happened. This is where we've got to start. We've got to start coming together, and maybe this road decision is going to be it. Maybe finally women have gone, hey, wait a second, that it's us. They're coming for us. And maybe they're their boyfriends and husbands and fathers and grandfathers. Maybe they're coming after people we care about. Maybe this is that moment. Maybe this is that spark. We can only hope.
There were multiple errors, miscalculations, and just a total lack of resources by the U.S. Forest Service.
New Mexico's largest ever wildfire caused by a prescribed burn. Japan's electric grid strains under historic extreme heat wave. Plus,
about 3/4 of U.S. adults have experienced extreme weather in the last 5 years.
And for many of them, extreme weather events are disastrous for long-term finances.
All of those disasters and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
I made the point that Jeff Clark is not even competent to serve as the Attorney General. He's never been a criminal attorney. He's never conducted a criminal investigation in his life. And he kind of retorted by saying, well, I've done a lot of very complicated appeals and environmental litigation. And I said, that's right, you're an environmental lawyer. How about you go back to your office and we'll call you when there's an oil spill.
Oh, environmental lawyer slam. Well, it's Jeff Clark. Actually, he was an anti-environmental lawyer, so go get him. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, you think enough people are watching the January 6 hearings to know that Jeff Clark was the guy that Donald Trump was trying to put into the top of the Department of Justice to help him steal the election?
Well, if they didn't, they do now.
They do now. What do you got for us today?
Well, first, in Japan, officials are urging millions of residents to conserve electricity as an historic and dangerous heat wave strains the electric grid. A persistent heat wave gripping Northeast Asia set a new national record for Japan for the month of June at 104 degrees, and 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, the town of Norilsk, Russia, hit a record 90 degrees. Globally, multiple June heat waves have set monthly and all-time high temperature records in the U.S., Europe, Asia, and the Russian Arctic, and it's not even July yet, which is typically the hottest month in the Northern Hemisphere. All of this matters because increasingly severe, frequent, and long-lasting heat waves are a clear manifestation of human-caused global warming.
And this is a very cruel summer so far.
Here in the U.S., a new report by the U.S. Forest Service concludes that the agency's mistakes during a controlled burn to reduce the threat of wildfires were responsible for causing New Mexico's ongoing Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon Complex fire.
Oops.
The largest wildfire in the state's history. The report found that the agency used outdated modeling that underestimated climate change-intensified drought and heat. Plus, it found chronic understaffing made worse by government shutdowns, and the pandemic created a years-long backlog in forest clearing projects that put pressure on crews to catch up. Forest Service Chief Randy Moore said man-made climate change has narrowed the window for prescribed burns, and it is causing more intense and frequent wildfires, creating, quote, conditions on the ground that we have never encountered. Fires are outpacing our models.
Not good.
A different study underscores how climate change is dangerous, widespread, and costly. It finds that more than 70% of American adults say they have been directly affected by extreme weather events like hurricanes, wildfires, floods, and heat waves over the last 5 years. And for many, it was financially devastating. The new nationwide survey conducted by Harvard University and National Public Radio found many weather disaster victims suffered long-term financial problems, in part because most disaster victims do not receive federal emergency funding.
Well, the important thing is that it doesn't cost the fossil fuel companies anything. They're doing just fine.
Here's NPR reporter Rebecca Hersher.
About a fifth of people who experience floods, they had long-term financial problems. And as far as health goes, about a third of the people who were affected by wildfires said that they had serious problems, mostly because of smoke in the air. People who are already marginalized in our society, they are more likely to suffer long-term financial impacts, long-term health impacts after a weather disaster.
Good reporting from NPR there.
And it's probably not a surprise that the survey found that people who have experienced extreme weather are more concerned about climate change and support climate policies.
Go figure.
But some good news. A federal environmental assessment has determined that hard rock mining in the Minnesota wilderness is an exceptionally bad idea that would risk contaminating the region's water. The U.S. Forest Service assessment found that proposed copper and nickel mining would pose a major risk to the region's famous Boundary Waters Canoe Area wilderness. The draft assessment proposes a 20-year ban on copper mining on federal lands in the watershed, and it comes 6 months after the Biden Interior Department canceled 2 mining leases in the area granted by the Trump administration. administration.
Good for the Biden administration.
Finally, voters in Colombia, in South America, have elected their first leftist president, an economist and former guerrilla fighter named Gustavo Petro, who campaigned on a platform of reorganizing Colombia's economy to combat climate change and end its dependence on fossil fuels. Petro has pledged to phase out new fossil fuel production.
The ironically named Petro.
Indeed.
For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on Thursday, you're going to have Justice Stephen Breyer retiring. Going to officially leave the Supreme Court, and Ketanji Brown Jackson will be sworn in as his replacement. Just in time for the EPA decision. Yay! That ought to be fun. But yeah, he's off into the sunset, and we'll now see what happens going forward. Also, it looks like Georgia, little sanity down in the Georgia race. Raphael Warnock has a double-digit lead over Herschel Walker. I wonder how much has to do with the Roe decision, or how much of it is just Walker's such a bad, crazy candidate. But we'll see. We'll see how much this Roe decision plays into the November elections. Here to share some thoughts on, well, where we are, where we're going, and maybe how important the ketchup on the walls and the broken dishes and the hamburger on the floor really are. I've asked our good friend Bill Scheer to come talk with us. Bill's a writer over at the Washington Monthly. Bill, thanks for taking time for us.
Always a pleasure.
So, you paid attention to the big hearings, are you?
I am, as best I can.
So I'm sure, like the rest of the mainstream corporate-controlled for-profit media, you were outraged about ketchup on the wall and the broken dishes. I'm sure that is where your focus was.
Did he lunge or did he not lunge? This is the crucial question. Look, I think no matter what's happening political here, history is being recorded. We're seeing in very granular detail that Donald Trump tried to overturn a legitimate election and went to absurd, ridiculous lengths to do so. I mean, the hopeful aspect of it, in my opinion, is that I do think the Constitution held. You literally had a president of the United States doing everything he could think of to trample on a legitimate election, and he could not do it because the Constitution and the laws do not allow him to do it. But there's no mistaking what he wanted to do and how determined he was to do it.
He wanted the vice president to be hung. I mean, when today's news was about ketchup on the wall, I didn't see many stories about him being okay with his number two being hung. Bill.
Or being okay with people armed showing up at his rally so long as they didn't hurt him. I mean,
exactly.
I mean, there's this weird pairing of how extreme he was willing to go and how ridiculous the plot was. It wasn't. This is the Keystone Cops operation. Yet at the same time, it literally could have led to worse violence than what we actually saw because he was so cavalier and glib about people being armed on his behalf.
Yeah, I mean, take the bags down, take them down. I want my people closer because he wanted the photo op. I mean, think about what the messaging and think about what historians in 100 years are going to look back at this moment and think about that administration.
And the positive thing is that we know, we have the evidence, we have the documentation, in large part because he, as much as he demanded loyalty of people, so many people were not loyal to him because what he wanted to do was so insane, that they could not hold their tongues. They felt it necessary to tell the public what has happened. And so we do know what he did. Our eyes are wide open. And I mean, I can't predict what the Republican Party is going to do with it. But you do see some evidence that even people who I would not call moderates in the Republican Party, that some of them even want to move on from this and don't want Trump to define what their party is.
Yeah. Now, I guess the big question I have for you, because we had this conversation a while ago. Do you think this leads anywhere? Do you think any indictments eventually happen? Do you think this goes? Because I said from the beginning, there's no way he's ever going to be held accountable. That we just don't do that. I got to tell you, these hearings have made me question that a little, not a lot, but question that a little bit. Because wow, there's so much here.
Well, it only puts the pressure on Attorney General Garland. If he's not going to indict, he's got to explain why. And that's, I mean, it's a tough position. I'm not someone who is inclined to berate Garland for being careful here, because it's not a light thing to indict a former president, someone who is clearly gearing up for president again, because it can so easily be considered a political act. But there is such overwhelming evidence here that it does make it hard to look away. And that's one of the values of this commission, because if Garland does indict, I think to a lot of people, it's not going to seem political. It's going to seem obligatory because of what we know.
Yeah. Now, the other question I have is, if Trump does run again, who will sign up to be his number two, knowing that he was willing to send his former number two to the wolves?
Well, it's a little hard to know of the people who are going to Iowa and going to New Hampshire. Are these people who want to run themselves, or are they running to be Trump's number two? Do they believe that it's not politically feasible to oppose him in a Republican primary, and they just want to suck up to him? So if he does run, he'll pick that person for number two, and that person will look good in the eyes of Republican voters in 28 and 32. Or are they running? Are they making these moves because they think Trump is losing steam, and they want to be there when there's a sense that his time has passed?
Yeah. Now you, Bill, are one of the most level-headed people I know. I've got a lot of friends saying, no, this is going to be a wave election with the hearings, with Roe, with all this stuff going on. Democrats are they're gonna sweep this election. You think that's possible? I don't, but I'm curious. You think
possible that Democrats can come back, or possible that we have a red wave?
The Democrats can come back.
It's possible. I mean, look, you have not seen a lot of heartening data up until this point. With Biden's numbers are low, inflation's high. There hasn't really been much of a. I mean, every time the Democrats get a win of some sort, it gets undercut. I mean, the day they actually pass a gun safety bill is the day that Roe v. Wade is overturned. So they can't even take that victory lap. When the infrastructure bill passed, then Bill Buck-Better got stabbed in the back by Joe Manchin, a few weeks later. So they haven't been able to string together the kind of victories that make people feel that this administration is on track. In the eyes of history, you'd say this is going to be a disaster for Democrats. But this decision, this Roe v. Wade decision, is so seismic. I mean, I can't tell you today whether it's going to be impactful come November or not, but I don't think it's a small thing. I think a lot of things have to come together. I think inflation has to come down at least somewhat. I think Democrats probably need to get some kind of reconciliation bill passed so that base gets some motivation again. But if you're able to go to the public and say, this not only is this decision bad, but Republicans up and down the ballot are determined to make it even worse, to take away as much of your reproductive freedom as they can possibly think of. Don't let them. That is not an irrelevant factor to this midterm. And so I would not go into this fall assuming that it's all over.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Bill Scheer. He's a contributor, political writer over at the Washington Monthly. We'll get links out of social media. I can take a look at his writing. Now, you had Cassidy Hutchinson testifying. Immediately they came out and they attacked her. Trump attacked basically the normal Trump attack. I barely knew who she was. She's nobody, that kind of nonsense. Didn't say that what she said wasn't true. Now you have other people who are saying that they're going to come and testify. I guess the people who claim they didn't say what she said. They said. Are they going to testify? I mean, I know they've thrown this out there. Do they come forward? Do they actually testify, or is this performative? Much like Jenny Thomas. I look at Jenny Thomas. Immediately, Jenny Thomas is like, I can't wait to testify and clear things up. And then her lawyer's like, well, let's walk that back.
I mean, I can't mind read. I don't know what they're willing to say publicly or not. What we do know is there was previous reporting that Trump wanted to go to the Capitol and had conflict with the Secret Service who would not let him go. Trump said that himself in an interview with the Washington Post. The interview was in April and it was published in early June. So Cassidy's testimony is in line with what was previously known and publicly reported. There may be little details again, like did he lunge at the wheel? Did he throw the dish? But these are really, tangential to the main storyline, which is Trump has said himself he wanted to go to the Capitol and the Secret Service wouldn't let him. That is, I think, much more crucial than some of the other smaller details.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the right wing to say, see, the Secret Service held him hostage. They wouldn't let him go where he wanted to go. So now they've subpoenaed this the Cipollone guy. What are we expecting out of this? Anything? I guess the first question is this a subpoena that he will fight, or is this one of those subpoenas, the only way I'll come in and talk is if I'm compelled? What do you think?
I mean, again, that goes beyond what I know. I do feel like this commission has been pretty savvy. They're not just throwing random things at the wall. If they're calling you in to testify, it's because they know something already. And again, I can't know if he is a cooperative witness or a hostile witness at this point. But they clearly know things already that they believe he can shed further light on. And if he doesn't testify, I imagine whatever it is the commission does know in relation to him, we will find out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Now, there's some of these, as they're playing bits and pieces of the interviews that they did, there's some of these that I'd really like to just see all of them. The Hirschman, the attorney, that Hirschman, I'd love to see all of his testimony.
I mean, I imagine we're going to get it all at some point. I mean, the commission seems pretty strategic in what they release publicly. Now, and if you want to be a cynic on the pro-Trump side, it might seem staged to you. They're cherry picking what they're putting out there. They're building a narrative. But I mean, they clearly are trying to tell a story, and in some ways, it's why it's so compelling.
Right, they're prosecuting a case. And look, here's where I believe, and I've already gotten some pushback yesterday. Got a lot of pushback from my Democratic friends. I believe this is all Liz Cheney's handiwork. I don't believe there are any Democrats involved in crafting this message, because they're horrible at messaging. They're horrible at communicating. They're horrible at this. I believe this is all Liz Cheney's handiwork.
I mean, they're only going to go when it is bipartisan. It is bipartisan. It may not be bipartisan the way Jim Jordan would have liked it, but it's bipartisan. I mean, I have friends who are upset that Liz Cheney is getting such a it's being so beloved by Democrats now, based on what she's said to Democrats in the past. But just objectively speaking, this never would have been on prime time if Liz Cheney wasn't there. Liz Cheney has basically told him, I'm willing to be front and center. I'm willing to make this a bipartisan duo. I will tell you what I think is going to be the most compelling. It is immeasurable, the impact she's had on this. It doesn't exonerate her from every position or statements that are in the past, but it's just a plain fact that if this was an all Democratic operation, it would not land the same way. It would not resonate the same way.
Yeah.
So if there's some reason to believe that what they're saying isn't the full story, well, Trump, well, Cipollone, well, Steve Bannon, show me.
Yeah.
Show me the evidence of what they're saying here is wrong.
Yeah.
Show up, testify, give me your documents, give me your text, give me your emails, and prove it.
Yep. Don't show up at the Four Seasons landscaping facility. Show up in the chair, put your hand on that book that you loved, claim to love so much, and swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God, and under threat of perjury and going to jail. Yeah, I'm all in favor of it. In fact, as much time as you need. Run and motorboat and grandstand all you want.
And if we get to actual trials, if there are actual indictments, we'll have that back and forth, whether the Trumpers like it or not.
Yeah. So last question I got to get to this Roe versus Wade decision. How big of a deal is this going to be in November?
Well, again, I think it could be. I can't say it will be, because a lot of things have to happen. Namely, it has to stay front and center. I mean, I don't want to argue that I'm wishing for this to be the case, but it's just the plain fact. People have to feel the implementation of what Republicans are doing. What we had in Texas the past year, which makes a lot of Republicans think, oh, this is no big deal. Abortion's not top of mind. It's not going to play the same way Democrats think it's going to, because this is just the fact. Most people in Texas in the past year were still able to get abortions. There's data on this. It's about a 10% reduction from the past year, because most people either crossed state lines in Oklahoma or Louisiana or got pills in the mail. It's very hard, even though pills are illegal in Texas, it's very hard to enforce that because they're sent out of state in nondescript boxes. So if access was still very prevalent, even in the states where it's being banned, and people weren't feeling it, and there weren't a lot of stories about it, then maybe it's not such a big deal. However, we're having such a broad swath of land where it's being outlawed or nearly totally outlawed. So it's not going to be so easy for a lot of people to cross state lines. Now, of course, the pills are another story, but pills can't cover everybody. There's going to be there can be complications that pills can't handle, can't deal with. So the more we're hearing stories about people's difficulty getting abortions, the more it's going to be in the news, the more people it's going to feel real to people. And there's data that came out in the Washington Post just this past week. 40 of the 50 states have a pro-choice majority. So that covers a lot of states where Republicans are in charge and they're banning it or almost totally banning it. So there's a lot of ingredients where this could become a very, very big deal. It's not just like deep red states who are doing this. You're talking a lot of purple states, yeah. Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Wisconsin, where the governor doesn't even want it, but there's a 19th century law that's not been resurrected. Ohio. These are places that have governors' races, that have attorney generals' races, that have state legislative races, as well in some cases U.S. Senate races. A lot of opportunities here for Democrats to say, whatever you were mad about us before, these people are up to no good. They want to take away fundamental rights that are going to affect your lives and your daughter's lives, and you don't want that.
No, you're absolutely right. And when we start hearing the stories of emergency rooms and women dying, and we start seeing the families on the evening news of pointing fingers at this as being the reason, I think you're right. I think it has to stay top of the mind. But sadly, I do fear people are going to suffer enormously over this. But Bill, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. As always, good stuff.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you.
Our good friend Bill Scheer. Make sure you check out the work that he does over at the Washington Monthly. I'll take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the dawn. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's I think Bill's right. I mean, this is one of those things where I think the Republican majority they're saying, hey, we're hoping that it just goes away. Hoping that, there'll be a little outrage. People will be upset for a little bit, but eventually they'll calm down. They'll forget. There'll be another outrage. We'll do something worse. Evidently on Thursday, we're expecting the West Virginia decision against the EPA, where the Supreme Court is expected to decide that the EPA will be able to do nothing to address climate change. Sorry, EPA. Yeah, it's your job to regulate, what happens with the environment, and your job to ensure that, people keep the air and the water clean and safe. The Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act that, made the air breathable and the water drinkable, that stuff. No, we won't be able to do that ever again. Yeah, congratulations. That's where we're going. Now that'll be an outrage, and then people will be upset about that. And the thought is it'll be one cause after another. And because I've had conservative friends say that liberals are cause heads. They go from one thing after another, that they don't stick with things very long. Not untrue, but these things I'm hoping are going to be the ones that stick. Look, when Janice hit, people were upset for a little bit, but most people are like, it's just those public sector workers, screw them. You go, no, those are workers. You allowed a segment of your own workforce, of your class solidarity to be eroded away. Again, injury to one being an injury to all. You allowed those public sector workers to get screwed over. And there was a little bit of outrage for a moment, and then they moved on. And now suffering the consequences. This can't be one of those. This can't be another, we lost, move on. This has got to be that there's a line in the sand now. That this is too far. The EPA thing, too far. Saying that, hey, corporate America can do whatever they want. The moneyed interests can do whatever they want. That's a problem. And it should be a problem because again, do we have to go back and learn the lessons of the past? Do we have to go back and live the tragedies of yesteryear? Do my children have to fight the battles of their great-grandparents? Is that... And look, they do say history repeats itself every 100 years you go through this. And here we are again. We're rolling right through this. I'm hoping we're smarter. I'm told we're smarter. I'm hoping we actually are. And this is one of those times where you go, how do we get smarter? How do we get to where, let's do the right thing now? And this is why, again, this November, so important. And look, the way forward here is get rid of the fives. If right now you know somebody who is still supporting the former guy, forget them. They're unreachable. I don't even talk to them anymore. At this point, they're unreachable. There are some Republicans that are reachable, and I have good conversations with them. They're folks that you can have a conversation with. But the fives, you let the fives go. They're the extreme. They're the unreachable, the immovable. They're bathing in the Kool-Aid. Let them go. That simple. Focus your energy, focus your time, your effort on moving forward, making things better. Back to the idea of how do we expand rather than tear away? How do we expand our pursuit of more opportunity? How do we expand our ability to lead a better life? It's my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, podcast. Make sure you download the podcast. Get it wherever you get your favorites, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Or just go to thericksmithshow.com. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day that American folklorist Archie Green was born in Winnipeg, Canada. His father was a Ukrainian refugee who had fought in the 1905 Russian Revolution. As a young boy, his family moved to Los Angeles. There, he enjoyed listening to cowboy songs on the radio. Archie grew up to become a shipwright and a carpenter, but he never forgot those cowboy songs. At the age of 40, he returned to college at the University of Illinois to study labor history. He wanted to learn about the songs and the stories at the heart of the U.S. labor movement. He was interested in what he dubbed labor lore, the folklore of working people. For 7 years, Archie led the effort to get Congress to pass the American Folklife Preservation Act. Finally, in 1976, Congress unanimously supported the act. The act allowed for the founding of the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. The center helps to collect the stories of the working class. Archie wrote books and essays about workers, including miners, tinsmiths, millwrights, and the Sailors Union of the Pacific. In 2007, he helped to edit the Big Red Songbook. The book includes the lyrics of nearly 200 labor songs. These songs had been included in various editions of the Little Red Songbooks published by the Industrial Workers of the World between 1909 and 1973. Archie Green understood that workers' stories deserved to be remembered and told. He spent 5 decades as a scholar and advocate for these stories. His work has helped to preserve the record of working class life in America for generations to come. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
What's the most damning thing about America's healthcare system? The system. While our doctors, nurses, and technicians are among the best in the world, the system itself is not even designed for care, but for the constant expansion of profits for insurance giants, drug makers, hospital chains, system managers, financiers, and other voracious components of the medical industry. For starters, ponder that term, medical industry. The ethical essence of healthcare is that it's a human right, essential to every person and to the common good. But corporate elites now claim to own our health by shriveling the concept of care to just another product available to those who can pay whatever monopolistic industrialists demand. But this rationing of care meant the industry was leaving a mass market of millions of patients untapped. So industry bean counters made a critical adjustment. Lower prices? Don't get silly. Instead, the system is pushing medical debt as the ticket to care. So you come in sick or injured, scared, dazed, and suddenly you're hooked up to a long-term medical payment plan. A recent survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation revealed that more than 100 million Americans, including 41% of all adults, are in hock because of the skyrocketing costs of the so-called care industry. This includes debt that patients owe directly to the system, plus money borrowed from family or friends or put on credit cards. An analysis in 2019 estimated that families were being hit with at least $195 billion in payments for medical borrowing, a number driven dramatically higher since the pandemic. As one doctor angrily said of industrial health care, debt is no longer just a bug in our system, it is one of the main products. We have a healthcare system almost perfectly designed to create debt. This is Jim Hightower saying, how sick is that?
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'm looking at California as they're in the process of ensuring that women's reproductive rights are part of their constitution, that abortive care is something that is the law. And you go, hey, maybe this is something we should have, I don't know, done a couple decades ago. Maybe would have been a good idea to not let it get to this point, because look, I'm not that bright, and I've been saying, look, they've been saying they're going to do this. They've been working towards this moment, and now the dog has officially caught the car. I guess that's the analogy we're using now. I would go with the dog has caught the car, not only caught the car, but chewing through the bumper, right through the back seat, and got Granny by the throat. And here to share some thoughts on this decision by our Supreme Court, I've asked Mary Jo Buchanan to come talk with us. She's a senior director of the Women's Initiative there at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website. You can check out the work she does there. Maggie Jo, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you.
So let's start with California. Kind of about time someone says, let's put this to the Constitution. Let's make this law of the land. Let's make sure that a bunch of people in dresses can't change things whenever they decide. Kind of a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we're seeing, and we have seen over the past many months, over the past many years, states taking steps to expand access to abortion, whether that be through insurance on their Medicaid plans, as well as efforts to codify the right. And obviously, that's all the more urgent. I think also something that we're learning, the laws for anti-abortion politicians have put in place have gotten so extreme and so quickly, now looking for ways to criminalize especially doctors over state lines. It's welcome progress to see many attorney generals throughout the country step up to say we're absolutely not going to participate in these schemes, as they should. So these are welcome signs, despite the fact that obviously the situation in the states right now, in many states, is quite dire.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to some younger women. I'm an older guy. This really isn't my issue. But I've got two young daughters that I'm concerned about their future. I'm concerned about what opportunities or lack of opportunities they're going to have going forward. And if they're going to have to live in the world that their grandmother's generation and great-grandmother's generation had to grow up in. And the horrible stories that I remember them telling me of people that they knew and botched backroom abortions and all kinds of horror stories. Don't want that for my daughters.
Right, absolutely. But I think, when you say it's not your issue, it is, because it's everyone's issue, right? Because people who care about those who need care, it's part of this issue. And I think genuinely, when you're talking about taking away the opportunities that Roe has brought to women, especially to this country, and by that I mean increased labor force participation, increased educational attainment, basically all of these things that are critical for women to be able to dictate the contours of their lives and set when and if they become mothers, when and if they start a family. These are things that affect the entire country, right? We know that the majority of people who get abortions are already mothers. Now, the other side may want to portray those who get care as irresponsible, frivolous, don't take the decision seriously. And we know that's not the case, because people who are accessing care know very well the responsibility of being parents, and are making the best decisions for themselves, as well as in many cases their family.
What I find interesting is I remember going back just a couple of years listening to conservatives talk about how the dreaded Obamacare was going to get between their patients and their doctors. Doctors are going to have to practice defensive medicine. There were going to be death panels. I remember specifically there were death panels, and they were death panels. And yet the very same people who were really concerned about all that, well, now that we have doctors, seriously, I mean, every story we're hearing now, doctors are going, hey, I don't know what to do. We've got women coming to emergency rooms, and they're literally waiting for them to crash before they can do anything for them. All of that horror story that we heard during the Obama years, actually they have brought to fruition.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, the culture of fear that these laws aim to and are succeeding in establishing in states is repugnant. I don't know a better way to put that. I mean, what's happening is they want doctors to feel paralyzed from giving care. One doctor, I believe out of Michigan, put it succinctly of, when you have a so-called exception for the life of a patient, well, what does that mean? Do you have to wait until they're on death's door, literally seconds away before you can give care? No one knows, because these laws don't make it clear. And that's, I think, by design, honestly. It's because they want to make sure that care that abortion is something to be feared in the medical community, when really it's a critical part of health. You know, we're even hearing reports down in out of Texas where pharmacists, because of the extreme regulations down in that state, are even afraid to dispense the medications that are needed to end an ectopic pregnancy, which we know can be fatal very quickly to a woman, and it never results in a healthy pregnancy. And this is, you know, it just shows the cruelty and the lack of respect to women, especially to anyone who needs abortion care, and also to doctors. And just that, exactly as you were getting at, the importance of having a trusted relationship with your doctor.
Yeah, and this is ideology over policy. This is ideology over anything else, because these are blind faith, true believers who they've got a mission. And everything else be damned. Your health, my daughter's health. Well, them be damned.
I mean, I think, you know, when you think about this radical shift that has occurred in, you know, just a few days ago, right, and almost a week ago, most of the country does not know a world without Roe, and that's a good thing. Most of the country doesn't know, you know, the situation that you spoke to at the beginning, when abortion care was far too often dangerous, was far too often illegal. But now we're returning to a place where it's really an open question, and unfortunately an answered question in many states, is if you know, my daughter, you know, my little girl, if she's ever going to be able to have the same rights recognized in the U.S. Constitution that she should. And instead, it's going to create schisms across our country of who is fully respected and given rights and who is not.
So do you see this November there being a backlash because of this? Do you see, you know, I know some of my Democratic strategist friends go, this is going to be a huge wave. Women are going to come out in full force. And I've got some folks on the other side who are going, yeah, the anger will quell because people aren't going to see the big changes that everyone thinks is going on. You know, how are you viewing how this is going to roll out in the coming months?
I think we're absolutely going to see a big shift. I think we already are. You know, I think that the point that's made of anger will go down doesn't recognize the fact of the parade of horribles that's coming our way, right? Of more stories of people being unable to access care, of, you know, more and more state legislatures openly talking about trying to stop people at borders if they're suspected to be pregnant to get abortion. We've seen that out of Missouri, but also I believe Texas. The extremism isn't going to stop, and it is going to continue to remind people of why it's so important to have policies in place that support abortion care.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Maggie Jo Buchanan. She's Senior Director of the Women's Initiative at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do there. Now, one of the things that, you know, over the weekend I spent, you know, some time, you know, you're just angry beyond belief. You know, as a father, I'm worried about my daughters. I've got a teenager and a daughter going into her 20s. And I'm worried about their safety. This is one of those moments where you go, are we going to return to a day where, because abortions aren't an option, that, you know, boyfriends who don't want to become fathers now, you know, do horrible things? Is this, are there going to be more, you know, more rapes that happen that don't get reported because, well, now you won't be able to access Plan B or any of these other things? There's a lot of stuff here that I fear for my daughter's safety, and that to me makes me angry.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it should make anyone angry, right? Anyone who cares about this. You know, we know homicide is a leading cause, if not the leading cause, of death for pregnant women in America. We also know that, to your point of, so many of these bans now don't even make exceptions for rape or incest survivors, which, the bans themselves, whatever exceptions, no one should be quote unquote deserving of care. But these bans without exceptions for rape or incest just show how far and how cruel these laws go, right? You know, there's some laws that do allow for exceptions for the quote unquote health of the patient, again, very vague, but many of them explicitly rule out mental health as well as rape and incest. So it's an acknowledgement that they're okay with the suffering, with the pain, and just the indignity and inhumanity of forcing a survivor to carry a pregnancy against their will. It sends such a signal about how those states view the autonomy, the rights, the future, the well-being of women, that is just it's almost hard to really vocalize.
But Maggie Jo, it's an opportunity. I mean, isn't that what Mean Gene Schmidt, the representative from Ohio, said? It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity.
What's happening right now, we need to remind people of how bad this is, and we need to remind people of the importance of speaking out against it. In that sense, the opportunity. And I think the need, rather, is to remind people of that, because this isn't going away. By the Supreme Court taking the horrifying move to eliminate the federal right to an abortion, this is going to be litigated, this is going to be argued, and it's going to be a huge political and social issue for years and years and years to come.
No, I agree, and this is I've been saying for a while, we're in a moment much like 1932. This is a major shift moment, and it isn't just this decision. It's a number of them that have been coming down. The one on speech. Money is speech, and corporations are people, and the Janus decision, and now this, and all of the ones that are coming. This is a major shift of taking us back to the good old days of the 80s and 90s, and not the 1980s and 90s, because I do see other things on the chopping block. Contraception being part of this. Do you fear that is part of what's next? I know my conservative friends are going, no, you're being hyperbolic, Rick. That's too far. That's just that truly, that one's decided law. That one, honestly, truly, that one's decided.
Yes, I think it's all at risk. And I think anyone who's saying it's not is doing an impressive performance of an ostrich. We know it has been openly discussed by politicians that they want to redefine pregnancy in order to ban IUDs and emergency contraceptive. They're absolutely coming for whatever they can, because this is about control. It's about taking away opportunities. And when it comes to women's lives, being able to define when and how to become pregnant is a huge part of opportunity. And they want to strip that away. Justice Thomas obviously signaled in his concurrence, he said plainly that the Supreme Court should reevaluate its precedents on contraception, on marriage equality. I've seen some people push back of, that was just one line by one person, one justice in a concurrence, while politicians are openly discussing these things. Years ago, no one would have imagined that abortion bans would be passed without rape or incest exceptions. That was considered a bit of a third rail. And now what do we have?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Let me ask you the last line of questioning, because, it's one thing, you as the director of the Women's Initiative there, it's a whole nother thing of you being a woman. And what does this mean to you personally? I mean, when you stop and you think about, how did you react when you heard this? Because initially, I mean, when the memo got leaked, I gotta imagine, it's gotta be something that just ripped your heart out.
Yeah, actually, no one's asked me that in the interviews I've been doing, but I remember I was in my kitchen. We had just gotten my daughter down to bed. She had a fussy night getting down to bed, and I after the oral arguments, after knowing the makeup of the court, I suppose I said, I was expecting it, but to see it was, my eyes filled with tears, but then I also said to my husband, I'm opening my laptop and I'm going to be working all night, because we have to keep fighting. But, one of the reasons I got into this line of work is one of many of when I was younger, and my grandmother shared when she had to take a friend to get what was then an illegal abortion in rural Missouri, and the real thank God they were all okay. But the horrifying circumstances that a pre-Roe world built, we're in a better place now because we do have access to early abortion medication, but the desperation is going to be all the same, and it's infuriating.
No, and that's the thing that I think a lot of people now don't get, because you said it a moment ago. We've never known a world without, most people haven't known a world without it being legal. And I was just a young kid when this was going on. And I remember my mother telling stories of her friends, a friend going to Kentucky and getting a backroom abortion and it going horribly wrong and her dying from it and how tragic and horrible and all of that was. And I remember that, but I've never lived that experience. And I think it's important to pass those along and to share those because, so many people don't have it. That's the reason I asked you what it meant to you personally.
I appreciate that.
Because I think those things are really important. It's one thing for, a 55-year-old white guy to say, this is an important issue, get out there and do something. It's something different coming from you.
I appreciate that. We all got to keep swimming, right?
Yeah. So last thing, what's the marching order then? What should I be doing? What should our listeners be doing? What should folks be doing, do you think?
I mean, so many things, but I think the most important is not to be afraid to talk about this. So many people, the other side wants anyone who has had an abortion to be shamed, to be silenced, to make it a sin, right? But this is a part of life, and the repercussions of this, it's important not to let people turn their head away. And then of course we gotta fight for all the good policies we can in the states and the federal level.
There you go. Maggie Jo, I appreciate you taking time for us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Maggie Jo Buchanan, she is the Women's Initiative Director there at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, the website. Check out their website. By all means, love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us or you've missed any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. I think it's important to share those stories and for people to understand that this is not something that's easy for a lot of folks. It's difficult. It's private, and it's going to have to become very public because it's. I've been having some conversations with some friends, going, "Look, this isn't. There's no undoing this. There's no quick undo button." There's no redo. There's no reset on this. The court has decided, and until politically you get enough people into the halls of power to make this the part of the law. And look, I saw AOC giving her spiel on Colbert. On, hey, we need to get rid of the filibuster. Hey, we need to pack the court. We need to do those things. That ain't happening. It's nice to say. Not going to happen. What you need to be doing right now is we need to be getting out into the streets. We need to be doing the hard work of organizing people. This is this moment. This is an incredible moment. This is an opportunity to reach people that, well, haven't been reached for a very long time. And this reaches into so many different places. This is an excellent opportunity for organized labor to begin organizing workers in their workspaces to ensure that corporate America makes sure that women have access to the care that they need. This is that moment, because guess what? Here's let me let you a little secret. The crazy right wing, they're already doing this. The Hobby Lobbies of the world, they've already done it. They've already denied women contraception. They've already done this work. It's now time to play a lot of catch up. And that's organizing for better wages, better hours, better conditions, better benefits. Benefits being ensuring that people have the care that they need, the privacy rights that they need, fighting for family medical leave, fighting for maternity leave, fighting for the things that we cannot get legislatively. And then fighting for it legislatively. Again, what's happened in this country has been, and we've been talking about it for years here. It is amazing at how easily the working class is divided and sliced and diced and pitted against each other over nonsense, over things that affect almost no one. And, I've watched it happen. I've watched firsthand how the right wing took over the lunchroom. I watched firsthand how Limbaugh and all of the right-wing talking heads co-opted the lunchroom conversation and changed it from, hey, how do we make our lives better? How do we get better wages, hours, conditions, better opportunity for our children, but better schools, better neighborhoods? How do we make things better? Better. How did we go from a movement of Gompers, we want more of the things that make our lives better, more of the things that make our lives more noble and childhood better? How did we go from that to hate and division, to I don't care if I get it, just as long as they don't? How did we get here? And the reality is the right wing spent lots of time, energy, and money focus group testing every phrase, every email, chain email they send out, every meme, focus group testing, think tank approved, and then they blared it out on their talk radio dominance, cable news, and just the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, just fear and anger, and there's someone coming for you, and it worked. I remember the first time, and I'll never forget this. I'll never forget it. The first time the gay marriage issue came up, it was years ago. It was playing on the TV at a restaurant up in upstate New York, just outside of Waterbury. We were at a little diner. I think it was Exit. No, not Waterbury. Newburgh. Exit 7 on 84. We're at a little diner, and there's like 6 of us at a table, and we're all heading up north. And one of the guys sees on the TV them talking about same-sex marriage and how there's this fight going on, and the guy's like, that's an abomination. It's going to ruin the sanctity of my marriage. And I'll never forget that phrase. It's going to ruin the sanctity of my marriage. And understand, this is a guy who had a wife and a couple of kids back in Pennsylvania and a girlfriend and a kid up in Massachusetts. And I remember at the time going, hold on, wait a second. So those people that you have no idea who they are, you've never met, you're never going to meet them, you're never going to come anywhere near them, somehow they're going to ruin the sanctity of your marriage. Is that what you're telling me? But the girlfriend and the kid that your wife and kids back, that's not. And this is how the weirdness, this is one of those moments where I go, we're falling into a rabbit hole of bizarre insanity, where we're projecting and we're looking at everybody else and not ourselves. And I go back to my grandfathers, don't worry about me, worry about yourself. Take care of your own house. Take care of your own affairs. Make sure you're doing the right thing. And I remember going to my grandfather, well, how do you know if you're doing the right thing? He goes, well, if you got to look over your shoulder and worry your grandmother's watching, you're not doing the right thing. How many of us are looking over our shoulder, looking to see if our grandmother's watching? Now, sadly, here's the scary part. Sadly, in this day and age, Granny's right there doing the wrong thing with us. That's the weird part of where we're at. Because we've just fallen into crazy, crazy times. Now, again, the hope is we wake up. The hope is we do the right thing. The hope is we come together and we fight on this. And hope is we make the future better for our children. Hope is we go back to being that movement, that working class that wants more, that wants better opportunities, that wants to expand the future, that wants, needs, demands better. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Grab the podcast. Never miss a moment. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.